A masterpiece can whisper secrets for centuries. Look at Botticelli's Primavera, with its graceful figures dancing in a sun-drenched grove. On the surface, it is a celebration of spring. But what if this painting, and countless other revered works of art and literature, are actually hiding a secret code? For hundreds of years, a mysterious esoteric brotherhood, known as the Rosicrucians, wove their radical philosophy into the very fabric of our culture. Their symbols and ideas were concealed in plain sight, a hidden language for those with the eyes to see. By the end of this journey, you will be able to spot the subtle signs of this code in everything from Shakespearean plays to modern cinema. We will uncover why an invisible college of thinkers shaped modern science. We will explore how a single opera can function as a spiritual initiation. The greatest mystery is not what the code says, but why it was hidden in the first place. What piece of art has always felt strangely mysterious to you? In the early 1600s, 3 anonymous manuscripts appeared in Germany, and they ignited a firestorm of intellectual curiosity across Europe. These were the Rosicrucian Manifestos, beginning with the Fama Fraternitatis. This document told a captivating story. It spoke of a man named Christian Rosenkreutz, a German noble who traveled to the East, acquiring profound wisdom from master sages in Damascus and Egypt. Upon returning to Europe, he founded a secret order dedicated to healing the sick for free and advancing all of human knowledge. The Fama announced that the tomb of this legendary founder had just been discovered, a hidden vault filled with strange artifacts and illuminated by an inner sun. This was not just a story, it was a call. It was an invitation for the learned and the virtuous to step forward and aid in a great reformation of the entire world. Soon after came the Confessio Fraternitatis, a text that doubled down on this call. It was a confession, but also a bold challenge to the established religious and scientific authorities of the day. It promised a new dawn of understanding, one that blended spiritual insight with empirical discovery, and it heavily criticized the superstition and corruption it saw in the world. Then there is the strangest of the 3, the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. This one is not a proclamation, but an allegorical tale, a first-person narrative of a 7-day spiritual journey. The aging Rosenkreutz is invited to a magical castle to celebrate a royal wedding. There, he witnesses and participates in fantastical events, from the felling of a great tree to the creation of a homunculus in a flask. The story is a dense tapestry of alchemical symbolism, describing a process of inner death and rebirth. So why were these 3 texts so revolutionary? They were not dry philosophical essays. They were designed as intricate puzzles, layered with symbols and coded language. They never gave an address or a meeting time. Instead, they presented a vision and a set of ideals, and then they waited. The true purpose was to attract not the casually curious, but those who possessed the intuition and the persistence to see beyond the literal words. They established the core Rosicrucian symbols that would echo through the centuries: the rose and cross, the vault of discovery, the pursuit of a lost, primal wisdom. This was the birth of the secret, not as a doctrine to be memorized, but as a living code to be deciphered and embodied. These manifestos gave the world a new visual language, a lexicon of symbols that artists and writers would use for centuries to come. The most iconic of these is, without question, the emblem of the rose and cross. This is not merely a flower placed upon a cross. It is a profound statement of their entire philosophy. The cross represents the material world, the physical body, and the realm of suffering and sacrifice. It is the stage upon which human life plays out. The rose, blooming at the center of this cross, symbolizes the human soul, a thing of perfect beauty and divine mystery unfolding within the harsh confines of earthly existence. It represents secrecy, for the rose often conceals its center, and the ultimate revelation of spiritual truth. This single image encapsulates the core Rosicrucian quest, the idea that enlightenment is achieved not by escaping the world, but by transforming it from within. Beyond this central emblem, other symbols served as crucial components of their hidden code. Consider the pelican, often depicted piercing its own breast to feed its young with its blood. In the Rosicrucian context, this is a powerful allegory for self-sacrifice and the alchemical process. It represents the initiate's willingness to offer up their own lower nature, their ego and desires, to nourish the growth of their higher spiritual self. It is a symbol of a painful but necessary transformation, where one substance is willingly broken down to create something far more precious. Then there is the phoenix, the mythical bird that burns to ashes only to rise again, renewed and more glorious than before. This is the ultimate symbol of rebirth and transmutation. For the Rosicrucian, the phoenix represents the death of the old, unenlightened self and the triumphant birth of the illuminated being. It is the promise that through a process of inner purification, a complete renewal of consciousness is possible. This is not a physical resurrection, but a spiritual one, where the base elements of the personality are consumed by the fire of knowledge to reveal the golden essence beneath. Finally, we have the all-seeing eye, often enclosed within a triangle. While commonly associated today with other groups, its Rosicrucian meaning is deeply personal. This eye does not represent a distant God watching from the heavens. It symbolizes the spark of divine consciousness within every individual, the inner eye of intuition and direct spiritual perception. The triangle often points to the principles of body, mind, and spirit united in harmony. When you see this symbol hidden in an old painting or an architectural detail, it is a silent reminder to look inward, to awaken that inner vision which can perceive the truths that the physical eyes cannot. This visual lexicon was their silent gospel, a way of preaching a radical spirituality without ever saying a word. This silent gospel of symbols found its most complex and beautiful expression in the language of alchemy. To the modern mind, alchemy conjures images of dusty laboratories and the futile quest to turn lead into gold. For the Rosicrucian, however, this was merely the outer shell of a profound inner science. Alchemy was their central spiritual metaphor, a detailed map for the transformation of the human soul. The entire process, known as the Great Work, was never about manipulating metals in a flask. It was about the purification and ultimate redemption of the alchemists themselves. This inner journey was methodically charted in 3 distinct stages, each with its own color and purpose. The first stage is nigredo, the blackening. This is the phase of putrefaction and despair. Imagine the raw materials of the soul, all the ego, the fear, and the base desires, being placed into the sealed vessel of self-reflection. There, they must decay. This is a necessary darkness, a spiritual death where everything the person thought they were begins to dissolve into a formless, black mass. It is a state of profound confusion and melancholy, where the old identity must rot away before anything new can be born. From this fertile blackness emerges the second stage, albedo, the whitening. After the chaos of nigredo comes a phase of purification and clarity. The soul, having been stripped of its grosser elements, is now washed and bleached by the waters of insight. It ascends, becoming like the pure white moon, reflecting the light of a higher consciousness. This is a time of peace and intellectual illumination, where the mind is cleansed and the first true glimpse of the spiritual self becomes visible. But the work is not yet complete. The final and most glorious stage is rubedo, the reddening. Here, the purified white substance is subjected to the final, intense heat of the inner fire. It does not burn away. Instead, it transmutes, glowing with a deep ruby red, and finally solidifying into the philosopher's stone, the spiritual gold. This is the ultimate goal, the creation of an immortal and enlightened consciousness from the base lead of the ordinary self. The gold they sought was always the radiant, perfected soul. Artists steeped in this tradition used alchemical imagery as a secret code to represent this hidden journey. A dark, shadowy forest in a painting might symbolize the negrito of a character's despair. A figure being washed by a pure white light could point to their passage through albedo, and a final scene bathed in a warm, golden sunrise, or a character crowned with a ruby, might silently announce their achievement of rubedo. Every flask, every furnace, every strange creature in an allegorical work was potentially a signpost on this most important of all quests. This spiritual quest for inner gold had profound and unexpected consequences in the material world. Just as the alchemist sought to perfect base metal, a new generation of thinkers began applying this same transformational mindset to the natural world itself. The Rosicrucian vision of a secret brotherhood working for humanity's betterment gave rise to a powerful idea, the invisible college. This was not a physical institution with a campus, but a network of like-minded seekers, a collective of philosophers, doctors, and naturalists communicating across Europe. They shared a radical belief that investigating the laws of nature was the highest form of worship, a direct way to decipher the divine language written into creation. This intellectual current flowed directly into the founding of one of the most prestigious scientific bodies in history, the Royal Society of London. Its famous motto, nullius in verba, essentially means take nobody's word for it. This was a declaration to test knowledge through experiment and observation, a principle that feels perfectly at home with the Rosicrucian call to move beyond superstition and established authority. The founders of the Royal Society were not hostile to spirituality. They saw their work as a sacred mission. Consider the enigmatic Robert Fludd, a man who perfectly embodies this fusion. He was a respected physician, a member of the Royal College of Physicians, yet he was also a profound esotericist. His intricate cosmological diagrams depicted the universe as a series of interlocking worlds, from the divine to the material, all connected by a divine light or spirit. For Fludd, studying anatomy or the movement of the planets was not separate from understanding the nature of God. It was the very same pursuit. Then there is the towering figure of Sir Francis Bacon, often called the father of the scientific method. His visionary book, New Atlantis, reads like a Rosicrucian manifesto in the form of a utopian novel. It describes a land called Ben Salem, discovered by lost sailors, which is governed by a secretive scientific order known as Salomon's House. The wise men of this order conduct experiments in vast laboratories, studying everything from optics to meteorology, all for the betterment of human life. They are the benevolent guardians of knowledge, a clear literary echo of the invisible Rosicrucian brothers. Bacon's blueprint for organized, collaborative scientific inquiry was a direct inspiration for the Royal Society. For these pioneers, a telescope was not just a tool. It was a lens for glimpsing the mind of the architect. A chemical reaction was not merely a physical process. It was a living parable of death and rebirth. They sought to read the great book of nature, convinced that its laws were the ultimate expression of a divine logic. The scientific revolution was born not in opposition to mystery, but from a deep and abiding desire to solve the greatest mystery of all. But this new science of observation was also applied to the silent sermons written in stone. The same principles guiding the invisible college found physical form in the soaring architecture of Gothic cathedrals. These structures are far more than places of worship. They are massive, three-dimensional textbooks of the Rosicrucian Code. Their very design follows a sacred geometry, a language of divine proportions believed to underpin the universe. The golden ratio, a specific mathematical relationship found in everything from seashells to spiral galaxies, was meticulously incorporated into their floor plans and facades. This was not merely an aesthetic choice, it was a spiritual statement, an attempt to build a microcosm of a perfectly ordered cosmos. Stepping into such a space was meant to resonate with the harmonic laws within the human soul itself. The journey through a cathedral is a profound allegory. You enter through the western door, traditionally associated with the setting sun, with ignorance and the unilluminated world. As you move forward down the nave, the long central aisle, you are walking from darkness toward light. Your destination is the eastern end of the church, where the altar sits, bathed in the light of the rising sun, a universal symbol of enlightenment and rebirth. This physical progression mirrors the inner path of the initiate, moving from the negrito of their former life through the purification of albedo, and finally arriving at the rubedo of spiritual awakening before the altar. Every pillar, every stained glass window, and every vaulted arch is a deliberate part of this symbolic journey. Nowhere is this coded language in stone more evident than in Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel. From the outside, it appears as a beautifully intricate but standard medieval chapel. Inside, it is an explosion of enigmatic symbolism that defies simple categorization. Its walls and ceilings are a dense forest of stone carvings, a bewildering mix of Christian figures, green men from pagan folklore, intricate geometric patterns, and clear alchemical and astrological symbols. One pillar, the famed apprentice pillar, is wrapped in a spiraling design of carved foliage, a motif often linked to the Kabbalistic tree of life, another map of spiritual ascent. The sheer diversity of these images suggests that Rosslyn was designed as a universal repository of wisdom, a place where all spiritual paths were seen as different roads leading to the same summit. It stands as a powerful testament to the Rosicrucian ideal of a synthesis of all knowledge, where nature, science, and spirituality are not in conflict, but are different expressions of one unified truth. The chapel itself becomes a philosopher's stone, a vessel where disparate traditions are fused into a single, glorious vision of enlightenment. This hidden language of stone and symbol found its ultimate expression in the vibrant world of the Elizabethan stage. William Shakespeare, a playwright whose works seem to contain the whole of human experience, may have also been a master of this secret code. The evidence points not to a man seeking personal fame, but to a philosopher weaving Rosicrucian ideals into the very fabric of his plays for a public audience. His final masterpiece, The Tempest, stands as the most profound example, a play that functions as a clear allegory for the Rosicrucian great work. At its heart is Prospero, the exiled Duke of Milan, living on a remote, enchanted island. He is the perfect portrait of a Rosicrucian magus. He has not conquered this island through force, but through knowledge. His power comes from his books, his deep study of the liberal arts, and the hidden laws of nature. He commands the elemental spirit Ariel and shapes the world around him, not for tyranny, but for a higher purpose, the restoration of moral order and the instruction of souls. His magic is an art of transformation, aimed squarely at those who wronged him. He orchestrates a storm not to destroy, but to bring his enemies to a place where they can confront their own corruption and be redeemed. The entire island becomes his alchemical laboratory, and its visitors are the raw materials to be transmuted. One of the most beautiful and explicit examples of this alchemical coding occurs during the mask scene. Prospero conjures a radiant vision for his daughter Miranda and her fiancé Ferdinand. Spirits appear as the classical goddesses Iris, Ceres, and Juno, who bless the couple. This lavish spectacle is a symbolic depiction of the final stage of the alchemical process, rubedo. The stage directions and language are saturated with the imagery of harvest, bounty, and celestial harmony. It is a vision of the perfected world, the golden outcome of the great work, representing the promise of a new and virtuous generation born from the trials that came before. Yet the true climax of the play, and its most powerful Rosicrucian lesson, is not a magical feat, but a deeply human choice. After having his enemies completely in his power, Prospero chooses to forgive them. He breaks his staff and drowns his book, relinquishing the very magic that defined him. This is the ultimate spiritual triumph. It signifies that the real magic was never about controlling spirits, but about mastering the self. The base desire for revenge has been transmuted into the spiritual gold of compassion and reconciliation. Prospero's journey mirrors the path of the alchemist, moving from the negrito of his betrayal and isolation, through the albedo of his planned justice, and finally achieving the rubedo of forgiveness. The Tempest is not merely a story about a magician. It is a dramatic ritual of inner transformation, a hidden sermon on a public stage about the real meaning of power and the true goal of the secret wisdom. That tempest which opens the play is far more than a simple storm. It is the violent, chaotic onset of the negrito stage. The ship is thrown into a black frenzy of wind and wave, its noble passengers screaming in terror and confusion. This is the symbolic dissolution, the putrefaction of their old world order. Their social ranks, their plans, their very sense of reality is shattered and plunged into a formless darkness, just as the raw materials in the alchemist's flask must first be reduced to a black, chaotic mass before any transformation can begin. They are not being punished, they are being prepared, washed ashore on Prospero's island. These disoriented souls enter the albedo phase, a period of washing and purification orchestrated by the ethereal spirit Ariel. Ariel is the very embodiment of albedo. As a spirit of air and intellect, he is invisible to most, a pure, cleansing force that manipulates events with moonlit clarity. He leads the king's party on a bewildering journey, separating them, testing them, and haunting them with haunting songs and spectral banquets. His goal is to scour away their arrogance and hypocrisy, to wash their minds clean with confusion until they are left in a state of vulnerable, white simplicity, ready for a new truth. Then there is Caliban, the monstrous native of the island. He represents the unrefined base matter, the primal lead that is essential to the work but resistant to it. He is all earth and appetite, a creature of untamed nature who curses the light and seeks only to gratify his desires. Prospero's endless struggle to educate and civilize Caliban mirrors the alchemist's frustrating work with the stubborn prima materia, the chaotic first substance that must be worked upon, yet which constantly threatens to corrupt the entire process. The true climax, the glorious rubedo, is not a magical feat, but a human decision. With absolute power over his enemies, Prospero stages a final confrontation. Yet instead of vengeance, he chooses forgiveness when he says, "The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance." He is announcing his achievement of the philosopher's stone. His staff, the instrument of his will, is broken. His book of spells, the source of his external power, is drowned. He has transmuted the base metal of his righteous anger into the spiritual gold of compassion and reconciliation. This is the ultimate reddening, the creation of an immortal wisdom that needs no external magic. The tempest of his rage has subsided into a profound and lasting peace. Centuries after Shakespeare, a different kind of alchemy was taking place in a quiet Dutch studio. Johannes Vermeer did not paint storms or magical islands. He painted moments of profound stillness, where light itself seems to hold its breath. His mastery of light is so celebrated that we often miss its deeper purpose. For those who can read the code, Vermeer's quiet interiors are not just scenes of domestic life. They are chapels dedicated to a silent, contemplative gnosis. His light is not merely sunlight. It is a visual metaphor for divine consciousness, illuminating the material world. Look at his painting, The Astronomer. A man is not merely looking at a celestial globe. He is in a state of rapt communion with the cosmos. His hand rests gently upon the globe, as if feeling the pulse of the universe itself. The light from the window falls directly upon him, and the book of knowledge before him, a clear statement that the study of nature is a sacred act. This is the Rosicrucian ideal made visible, the belief that by investigating the laws of creation, one draws closer to the Creator. The same reverence is present in the geographer, caught in a moment of inspired discovery. The charts and instruments that fill his room are not just tools, they are the sacred implements of a spiritual quest. These men are priests of a new religion, a religion of observation and reason, where a single beam of light reveals the presence of the divine in a dusty study. Beyond these overt subjects, Vermeer fills his quieter scenes with a lexicon of symbolic objects, a hidden language for the initiated observer. The maps that hang on the walls are not merely decorations. In an age of exploration, they symbolize the charting of both the external world and the internal landscape of the soul. A woman reading a letter before a map is engaged in a double journey, deciphering a personal message while metaphorically navigating the greater world. Musical instruments, especially the lute or virginals, were common symbols of harmony, both musical and spiritual. To play well required tuning the strings to perfect harmony, just as the Rosicrucian seeker aimed to tune their own body, mind, and spirit into a resonant whole. And then there is the pearl. Vermeer is fascinated by pearls, often depicting them as a single, luminous earring catching the light. In the esoteric tradition, the pearl is a powerful symbol of wisdom born from suffering, a perfect, radiant consciousness formed through a long and hidden process within the shell of earthly experience. When a woman in a painting turns towards the light, her pearl gleaming, it is a silent announcement of an inner illumination taking place. Vermeer's genius was to encode this spiritual pursuit within the utterly ordinary. He invites us not to a dramatic initiation in a castle, but to a quiet awakening in a sunlit room. He teaches that the light of gnosis is available here and now, falling on a bread basket, a blue cloth, or a thoughtful face, waiting only for a mind quiet enough to perceive it. While Vermeer found the divine in quiet light, another artist heard it roar. William Blake channeled the entire Rosicrucian current into a torrent of visionary poetry and art, creating a personal mythology that was both a key and a lock. He was not a quiet seeker, he was a prophet, and he saw the creative imagination as the supreme human faculty, the very organ through which eternity could be perceived. His illuminated book, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, reads like a Rosicrucian manifesto, reborn in fiery, paradoxical verse. In it, he declares that without contraries, there is no progression. This is the core of the alchemical process, the necessary tension between opposing forces, the black and the white, that generates the red of spiritual gold. Blake saw the established church and the cold rationalism of his age as a prison for the human spirit, and he set out to break its chains with his art. He created a pantheon of symbolic beings to represent the forces at work in the human soul. The most infamous of these is Urizen, the stern, bearded old man you often see in his paintings, holding compasses and measuring the void. Urizen is not God. He is a false god, the personification of sterile reason, cold law, and empty dogma. He is the mind that tries to box the infinite into rigid categories, the tyrant who banishes the poetic genius. For Blake, this figure represented everything the Rosicrucians opposed, the dead letter of the law that kills the living spirit. Against Urizen, Blake pits Los, the eternal prophet and embodiment of the creative imagination. Los is the divine fire within humanity, the force that forges new worlds through art and prophecy. He is the spiritual energy that the Rosicrucians sought to awaken, the inner sun that illuminates the vault of the soul. Blake's most profound expression of the Rosicrucian path is his concept of fourfold vision. He described 4 distinct ways of seeing the world. Single vision is the state of most people, perceiving only the hard, material surface of things, locked in a Newtonian sleep. Twofold vision adds the dimension of emotion and reflection, a deeper but still dualistic perception. Threefold vision is the level of imaginative empathy, where you can see through the eyes of another. But the ultimate goal is fourfold vision, a state of ecstatic, spiritual perception, where the divine imagination within you recognizes and communes directly with the divine reality in all of creation. This is the true philosopher's stone, the attainment of a consciousness that sees the eternal in the temporal. Nowhere is this inner transformation more powerfully depicted than in his series of illustrations for the Book of Job. He takes the biblical story and turns it into a complete alchemical drama. The sequence begins with Job and his family piously worshiping God under the stars. But Blake reveals this initial piety to be a form of single vision, a religion of fear and rules. They are surrounded by their sheep and their musical instruments, but their God is a distant, bearded lawgiver, much like Urizen. Then comes the suffering, the negrito. Job loses everything and is plunged into the blackness of despair, seated on ashes, his body covered in sores. His comfortable world dissolves, and in his dreams, he is tormented by demonic, narrow-minded visions of a vengeful deity. This is the necessary putrefaction of his old understanding. The turning point, the albedo, arrives when God finally speaks to Job from the whirlwind. In Blake's stunning illustration, God is no longer the old man. He is a vibrant, youthful, and terrifying figure of creative energy, surrounded by a vortex of light and cosmic wonder. He shows Job the behemoth and the leviathan, not as monsters to be feared, but as magnificent expressions of a boundless, imaginative universe. Job is washed in this new light. His perception is purified. He realizes that the God he was worshiping was a pathetic idol of his own limited mind. The final state, the rubido, shows Job and his family restored. But they are not simply wealthy again. They have achieved fourfold vision. They make music, not out of duty, but from overflowing joy and inspiration. The God they now worship is within and among them, a presence of divine humanity. The instruments of their former, fearful religion are gone, replaced by the true tools of the Spirit, the harp and the creative self. Blake's entire life was a testament to the idea that the artist is the true spiritual heir of the mystic, that the imagination is the secret chamber where the rose eternally blooms upon the cross of mortal experience. Goethe's Faust is the ultimate portrait of the eternal seeker, a man who has mastered every academic discipline yet finds himself starved for genuine wisdom. His famous study is a prison of books, a monument to knowledge that has failed to quench his thirst for direct, living experience. In his despair, he turns to forbidden arts, summoning the earth spirit, the very force of nature's creative power. But the spirit appears and vanishes, telling Faust he is too different from the being he beholds. This is his negrito. The black despair of realizing his intellect is utterly inadequate to grasp the divine. It is from this abyss that his pact with Mephistopheles is born. The devil in this story is not a horned monster, but something far more insidious, a spirit of pure negation. Mephistopheles is the embodiment of cold, cynical reason, a force that can only destroy and mock, never create. He is the ultimate literalist, unable to see the soul in a thing, only its material parts. He offers Faust the world, all its pleasures and experiences, but with a cruel catch. The moment Faust is satisfied, the moment he wishes for a moment to linger, he will lose his soul and die. This wager is not about good versus evil. It is a profound exploration of the Rosicrucian path. It asks whether a human being, by striving endlessly, even through error and sin, can ultimately transcend their own limitations. Faust accepts, not for power or pleasure, but for the chance to experience life in its fullest, most transcendent form. Mephistopheles becomes his perverse guide through the world, leading him through sensual adventures and worldly triumphs. Yet each experience, from the tragic love affair with Gretchen to his exploits at the imperial court, ultimately rings hollow. Faust consumes these experiences, but they do not satisfy his deeper hunger. Mephistopheles, true to his nature, cannot understand why. He believes he is corrupting Faust with worldly delights, but he fails to see that every failure, every heartbreak, is actually a stage in Faust's alchemical purification. The base lead of his intellectual pride is being broken down through lived experience. The true turning point, the moment of albedo, arrives not through a devilish scheme, but through a vision of pure, selfless love. The ghost of Gretchen, the woman whose life was destroyed by his selfish passions, appears to him as a figure of forgiveness and grace. Her love, even from beyond the grave, begins to wash his soul clean, showing him a value beyond his own gratification. This leads to the final, glorious act of Faust's life. An old man, now blind in his physical eyes, he is finally able to see with his inner vision. He hears the sounds of workers reclaiming land from the sea, creating new earth for a free people to live on. In this vision of selfless service to humanity, he finds a moment of profound fulfillment. He utters the fateful words, wishing that such a moment could last forever. According to the pact, he should now lose his soul, but a miracle occurs. His striving was not for personal pleasure, but for the good of others. He has finally transmuted his base desires into the spiritual gold of altruistic love. As he dies, heavenly hosts descend not to punish him, but to carry his soul upward. They sing of the power of the eternal feminine, das ewig Weibliche, that draws us ever onward. This is not about gender, but about the universal, creative, and loving principle of the universe, the divine Sophia, or wisdom, that the Rosicrucians sought. It is the ultimate transformative force, the antithesis of Mephistopheles' sterile negation. Faust is saved not by his intellect or his sins, but by his endless striving toward love and spirit. His entire life becomes the great work, a messy, painful, but ultimately successful alchemy of the soul, proving that the true goal of the secret path is not knowledge for its own sake, but love in action. That same divine fire which animated Blake roared through the hearts of the Romantic poets a generation later. They too were spiritual revolutionaries, turning away from the cold rationality of the Enlightenment to champion the individual soul, the wildness of nature, and the supreme power of the creative imagination. In their quest, they became unwitting prophets of the Rosicrucian Code, translating its ancient ideals into a new and passionate language. Percy Bysshe Shelley's monumental work, Prometheus Unbound, stands as a perfect example. The myth of Prometheus, the titan who defies the gods to bring fire to humanity, is reshaped by Shelley into a profound spiritual allegory. In his version, the tyrannical god Jupiter represents not a divine being, but the oppressive power of established religion, social convention, and all the mental chains that bind the human spirit. Prometheus' long suffering is the Negrito of the world, a state of darkness and torment endured for the sake of a stolen spark of consciousness. His liberation does not come through a physical battle, but through a profound inner shift. The pivotal moment occurs when Prometheus, after millennia of hatred, retracts his curse against Jupiter. He replaces it with pity, an act of profound compassion that instantly unravels the tyrant's power. This is the ultimate Rosicrucian transmutation, where the base metal of vengeful rebellion is forged into the spiritual gold of unconditional love. With Jupiter's fall, the entire cosmos is reborn. Humanity awakens to its own divine potential, casting off superstition, and fear to rule itself through love and imagination. Shelley's vision is a direct echo of the Rosicrucian promise, a world reformed not by an external savior, but by humanity's own achieved enlightenment. While Shelley wrote of cosmic revolution, his contemporary John Keats turned his gaze inward, exploring the subtle state of mind required to perceive such truths. He gave it a name, negative capability. He defined it as the state when a person is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. This is not indifference or ignorance. It is a profound and active receptivity, a willingness to hold the mind open like a vessel, allowing intuition and hidden realities to flow in. For Keats, a poet must possess this quality to create truly great work, but its application is universal. This is the precise psychological preparation the Rosicrucian tradition demands of its seekers. It is the essential state of albedo, the purified, moon-like receptivity that must precede the fiery dawn of rubedo, an impatient mind, one that demands immediate answers and logical certainties, slams the door on deeper wisdom. Keats believed that the world was a veil of soul-making, a phrase that could serve as a summary of the entire alchemical process. He saw life's sorrows and joys not as random events, but as the necessary tools for forging a unique and intelligent soul from the raw spark of divine intelligence we are born with. This is the great work expressed in the most intimate, personal terms. His famous odes are exquisite exercises in this very capability. In Ode to a Nightingale, he does not try to capture or dissect the bird's song. He allows himself to be dissolved by it, to fade away with the music into the forest dim, exploring the ecstatic and painful mystery of beauty, mortality, and transcendence. He holds the contradiction without forcing a resolution, and in that open space, a deeper truth is glimpsed. The Romantic poets, in their celebration of the individual's inner light and their faith in imagination as a path to truth, became the modern voice of an ancient quest. They remind us that the vault of wisdom is not opened by a key of dogma, but by a heart capable of wonder and a mind brave enough to dwell in beautiful uncertainties. Gustave Moreau's canvases are not windows to our world, but portals to a frozen, spiritual dimension. In paintings like The Apparition, biblical and mythological scenes are stripped of their narrative urgency. The figures stand not as actors in a drama, but as eternal archetypes, encrusted with jewels and gold leaf, shimmering in a light that seems to emanate from within. Salome gazes with a detached calm at the radiant, floating head of John the Baptist, a vision that is both horrific and sublime. Moreau was not illustrating a story, he was creating a temple. His static, hieratic compositions were designed to halt the rational mind and speak directly to the soul, inviting the viewer into a state of contemplative awe. This was the core of the Symbolist project, a deliberate turn away from the gritty realism of the industrial age toward the inner landscapes of dream, myth, and esoteric truth. Moreau's studio became a library of the invisible, and his paintings functioned as sacred icons for a new kind of worship, a worship of the beautiful and terrible mysteries lurking just beyond the veil. While Moreau built his visions with the rich colors of a cathedral window, Odilon Redon mined the depths of darkness to find his light. His early works, a series he called his noirs, were rendered entirely in charcoal. These are not mere drawings, they are excavations of the subconscious. From a profound blackness emerge floating eyes, strange blooms with human faces, and hybrid creatures that defy classification. A single, enormous eyeball might float like a balloon over a desolate landscape, or a mournful spider might bear a human head upon its body. These are not nightmares for shock's sake. They are profound symbols of the soul's own journey. The floating eye is the inner eye of intuition, unmoored from the physical body to perceive higher realities. The hybrid beings represent the alchemical fusion of different states of consciousness, the animal and the divine wrestling within a single form. Rodin was channeling the raw, unformed material of the psyche, the negrito of the mind, giving shape to the formless anxieties and wonders that precede enlightenment. Later in his life, Rodin's palette exploded into radiant, ethereal pastels. It was as if he had passed through the blackness and arrived in a world of pure, colored light. In this phase, he repeatedly turned to the figure of the Buddha, not as a religious icon from the East, but as a universal symbol of achieved inner peace. His Buddha is often serene, immersed in a nimbus of soft, luminous color, representing the ultimate state of albedo and rubedo, where the chaos of the noirs has been transmuted into a tranquil, illuminated consciousness. This entire trajectory, from the formless black of the charcoal drawings to the radiant clarity of the pastels, mirrors the alchemical great work with stunning fidelity. Rodin's art is a direct visual manifestation of the Rosicrucian path, a map of the soul's ascent from the primordial darkness of the unawakened self to the brilliant, colorful revelation of the spirit. He teaches us that the most profound mysteries are not found in the outer world, but in the vast, unexplored continent of our own inner dreamscape. The symbolist exploration of inner dreamscapes found a powerful echo in a new movement that sought to map the entire cosmos of the soul. At the end of the 19th century, a formidable woman named Helena Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society, creating a monumental bridge between ancient traditions like the Rosicrucian and the modern spiritual seeker. Theosophy, meaning divine wisdom, did not invent a new religion. Instead, it acted as a vast conduit, gathering streams of esoteric thought from East and West, including the core Rosicrucian ideals, and repackaging them for an industrial age hungry for meaning. Blavatsky's seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, presented a grand, cosmic history of humanity, speaking of root races, cycles of time, and a hidden brotherhood of advanced spiritual masters who guided human evolution from behind the scenes. This was a direct and powerful continuation of the Rosicrucian Invisible College, now expanded to a global and even cosmic scale. The secret vault was no longer just in Europe. It was a hidden spiritual center accessible to all who developed the inner sight. This philosophy provided a new vocabulary and a fresh narrative for artists who felt that realism could not capture the whole truth of existence. One such artist was the Russian mystic and explorer Nicholas Roerich. His paintings are not simple landscapes. He traveled extensively through the Himalayas, and the mountains he depicted are visions of a sacred, hidden geography. He painted in bold, luminous colors, capturing vast, silent valleys under impossibly vibrant skies, often dotted with ancient monasteries clinging to cliffsides. These were not just records of a place. They were intended as portraits of Shambhala, the legendary kingdom said to be hidden somewhere in Central Asia, a place of peace and ultimate wisdom that would one day guide humanity through its darkest hour. In Roerich's work, the Rosicrucian theme of a secret spiritual center guiding humanity finds its ultimate earthly expression. The inaccessible mountain peak, glowing with an inner light, replaces the alchemical vault. The journey to find Shambhala becomes the new great work, an external quest that mirrors the internal ascent of the soul. Through theosophy, the Rosicrucian impulse to seek a hidden wisdom was globalized, democratized, and painted onto a canvas as vast as the cosmos itself, proving that the longing for a secret center is a timeless and universal human drive. The same mystical currents that flowed through the symbolists found a powerful voice in the poetry of William Butler Yeats. He did not merely write about esoteric ideas. He lived them as a dedicated initiate of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This was not a casual club for intellectuals, but a rigorous secret society whose entire structure was built upon a foundation of Rosicrucian ritual and Kabbalistic wisdom. For Yeats, the Golden Dawn was a laboratory for the soul. He participated in elaborate ceremonies, learned the art of scrying, and immersed himself in a complex symbolic system designed to orchestrate the very inner transformation we have been tracing. His poetry became the public record of this private spiritual science, a coded transmission from the frontiers of consciousness. His later work is saturated with a unique symbology that can feel obscure without this key. Consider his terrifying vision in The Second Coming, the poem's famous opening, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer, is not just a metaphor for social chaos. The gyre is a core symbol from his esoteric system, a conical spiral representing a 2,000-year cycle of history. One gyre represents a primary, stable civilization, while its opposing twin represents the antithesis slowly growing within it. He believed that at the end of an era, like the Christian age he saw collapsing, the gyres intersect and the world turns inside out, letting the rough beast slouch toward Bethlehem to be born. This is not mere pessimism. It is a grand, cyclical view of spiritual history drawn directly from his occult studies, a vision of the necessary death of one world to make way for the violent birth of another. This entire cosmology was systematized in his strange and monumental work, A Vision, a book he claimed was dictated to him by spiritual communicators through his wife's automatic writing. At its heart is a complex diagram of the phases of the moon, used to map 28 distinct stages in the development of human personality and destiny. This is the Rosicrucian impulse to chart the soul's journey taken to its most intricate extreme. He called this model the Great Wheel, and each soul incarnates into a specific phase, striving toward its opposite, or its mask, to achieve balance. The goal was not a single state of enlightenment, but a dynamic tension between opposing forces, the primary self and the anti-self, the sun and the moon. This is the alchemical marriage expressed through the entire arc of a life. When you read a Yeats poem that speaks of a fascination with what is difficult, or the doctrine of the mask, he is referencing this core idea that we grow spiritually by consciously adopting qualities that are foreign to our innate nature. His entire poetic project was an attempt to render the invisible architecture of the soul visible through verse. He was not a poet who dabbled in the occult. He was a magus who used poetry as his most potent spell, weaving the golden threads of the Rosicrucian Code into the tapestry of modern literature. The desolate landscape of the wasteland is a perfect portrait of spiritual negrito on a global scale. T.S. Eliot's monumental poem does not tell a single story. It presents a fractured collage of a civilization in decay, a world reduced to a heap of broken images. The very structure of the poem mimics the alchemical blackening, where all the old certainties of faith, love, and culture have been dissolved into a sterile, formless heap. This is the modern condition, a spiritual drought where the land is barren and the people are hollow, unable to connect or feel. The poem's opening lines set this tone of exhausted despair, with April, the month of rebirth, being the cruelest month, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Life itself has become a torment to these living ghosts. Within this wasteland, Eliot plants clear signposts for the esoteric seeker. The first major clue appears with the clairvoyant Madame Sosostris and her wicked pack of cards. This is no random fortune teller. She is reading from the tarot, a traditional deck rich with Rosicrucian and Kabbalistic symbolism. She names the cards, the drowned Phoenician sailor, a clear echo of the alchemical phoenix, the symbol of rebirth through death. She sees the man with 3 staves, often associated with the Fisher King, and the one-eyed merchant, a figure of spiritual blindness in a material world. Most importantly, she cannot find the Hanged Man, a card that traditionally represents self-sacrifice and spiritual surrender. the very key to reversing the curse. His absence from the spread is a devastating diagnosis. The essential ingredient for healing is missing from the modern soul. This entire sequence frames the poem as a grand puzzle, inviting the reader to become the quester, to pick up these symbolic fragments and try to reassemble a lost meaning. The central myth holding the wasteland together is that of the Fisher King. In Arthurian legend, the king has been wounded, often in the thighs, and his impotence casts a pall over his entire kingdom, rendering it sterile. The land and the king are one, his inner sickness made manifest in the outer world. The quest for the Holy Grail, the chalice that can heal him, becomes the central adventure. Eliot uses this myth as the poem's backbone. The modern world is the Fisher King's kingdom, and its inhabitants are the knights wandering through a desolate chapel, unable to ask the right question that would break the spell. What is the question, and what is the Grail? For Eliot, deeply influenced by esoteric thought, the Grail is not a physical cup. It is the symbol of a lost spiritual unity, the vessel of divine grace that has been forgotten. The question is one of compassion and spiritual intent, the same selfless love that saved Faust. The poem's final section, What the Thunder Said, builds to a dramatic climax of thunder and the absence of rain, a testament to this aching need. Then, just as the tension becomes unbearable, the poem ends with a series of fragmented utterances from various sacred texts, culminating in the 3 Sanskrit words, shanti, shanti, shanti. This is not a cry of defeat. In the Hindu Upanishads, shanti is a formal peace, the peace that passeth all understanding, the kind of deep, structural tranquility that comes after a great trial. It is the whispered promise of rubido. It does not mean the wasteland is instantly healed, but that the formula for its regeneration has been spoken into the silence. The spiritual solution is hidden within the lament itself, a secret mantra of peace, waiting to be understood by those who have endured the necessary blackening. Eliot offers no easy resurrection, only the hard-won possibility that after the fragmentation, a new and more profound wholeness can be found. That same fragmentation of reality, explored by Eliot, would soon be weaponized as a deliberate creative tool. The Surrealists did not lament a broken world, they celebrated the cracks, for it was through those cracks that the true marvels could flow in. André Breton, the movement's fierce pope, issued its first manifesto in 1924, declaring a psychic revolution. His central technique, automatic writing, was a direct attempt to bypass the rational mind. He would urge his followers to write as swiftly as possible, without any conscious control or aesthetic concern, allowing words and images to surge up from the unconscious. This was not seen as a random psychological exercise. For Breton, it was a sacred act, a modern method for channeling what the Rosicrucians might have called the higher genius or the inner guide. The hand moves, but the message comes from a source beyond the petty self, a surrender to the invisible college of the psyche. It was a democratization of prophecy, suggesting that the secret vault of wisdom was not in a hidden tomb, but within the mind of every person, waiting to be unlocked through this deliberate suspension of will. Salvador Dali took this principle of receiving messages and forged it into a terrifyingly precise weapon, his paranoia critical method. This was not about clinical paranoia, but a disciplined cultivation of delirious associations. Dali trained himself to look at the world and see double, even triple, meanings in a single object. He could stare at a cloud and simultaneously perceive a galloping horse, a human face, and a map of Spain. This systematic confusion of reality was his way of breaking the tyranny of a single, logical perspective. It was a spiritual practice aimed at perceiving the hidden connections that bind all things, a core tenet of the esoteric worldview. His most famous painting, The Persistence of Memory, is the ultimate product of this method. On the surface, It is a bizarre dreamscape of melting clocks draped over a barren tree and a strange, fleshy creature. But to view it as merely a dream image is to miss its profound alchemical symbolism. Those soft, dripping timepieces are not just symbols of subjective time. They are precise emblems of transmutation. In the alchemical process, solid matter must first become liquid. It must melt and lose its rigid form before it can be reshaped into a higher state. Dali's clocks are undergoing this very process, their hard, metallic certainty dissolving into a fluid, dreamlike substance. They represent the death of our ordinary, linear experience of time, the negrito of our temporal reality. The timeless, golden landscape and the silent, endless beach suggest a dimension beyond this decay, a potential state of rubido where time itself is redeemed and becomes eternal. Dali's entire artistic universe, with its crutches supporting fragile forms and its drawers secreting away hidden thoughts, is a symbolic landscape of the psyche undergoing its own great work. He painted the actual process of inner transmutation, where the lead of consensus reality is melted down in the crucible of the unconscious mind, waiting to be recast into the spiritual gold of a new and miraculous vision. The same dream logic that fueled the Surrealists found a different, more structured expression within a quiet Oxford pub. While Dali explored the melting clocks of the inner mind, a group of academics known as the Inklings were busy building entire worlds from the raw material of myth and faith. J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, the group's most famous members, were not just telling stories. They were practicing a form of Christian esotericism, embedding the very principles of the Rosicrucian quest into the heart of modern fantasy. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings is far more than an epic adventure. It is a profound symbolic narrative about the great reformation the Rosicrucian Manifestos called for. At its center is the One Ring, an object of absolute power that corrupts all who desire it. This is not merely a magical artifact. It is the ultimate test of the human soul, a crucible where every character, from the humble hobbit to the mighty wizard, must face the negrito of their own potential for darkness. The journey to destroy the ring in the fires of Mount Doom is a grand alchemical operation. The Fellowship itself is the sealed vessel, containing opposing elements, the stout heart of the dwarf, the ethereal grace of the elf, the fallible nature of men, and the innocent resilience of hobbits. They must endure the blackening of despair, the whitening of sacrifice, and finally, the reddening of a world reborn through the ultimate act of letting go. Frodo's failure at the very edge of the cracks of doom, where he claims the ring for himself, is a devastatingly human moment. It proves that no one, not even the purest heart, is immune to the corruption of power. The quest only succeeds through a previously unforeseen act of compassion, Gollum's biting off the ring and falling into the fire. This is the unpredictable grace that completes the great work, a messy, painful, but ultimately successful transmutation that breaks Sauron's power and re-enchants Middle-earth. The Shire, though scarred, is saved, and a new age of diminished magic but greater inner freedom begins. This is the Rosicrucian Reformation on a mythic scale, a world healed not by a messiah, but by the collective, sacrificial striving of its inhabitants. C.S. Lewis achieved a similar feat through the shimmering portal of a wardrobe. In the land of Narnia, the central alchemical drama is embodied in a single, magnificent figure, the lion Aslan. When the White Witch plunges Narnia into an endless winter, she creates a world of spiritual lead, a frozen state where it is always winter but never Christmas. This is the land in the grip of Negrito, a sterile, lifeless condition under a tyrannical rule. Aslan's arrival brings the first thaw, the first hint of albedo's purifying light. But the true transformation requires the ultimate sacrifice. On the stone table, in a scene echoing both ancient myth and Christian passion, Aslan willingly submits to the witch's knife. He is shamed, shorn of his mane, and killed. This is the moment of supreme putrefaction, the death of the king. But as the dawn breaks, the stone table cracks, and Aslan returns to life, more vibrant and powerful than ever. This is the glorious, undeniable moment of Rubido. His resurrection is not just a personal victory, it is a cosmic event. His breath melts the snow, his roar shatters the witch's spells, and the entire world of Narnia erupts from frozen lead into a golden, vibrant spring. The land itself is transmuted by his selfless act. For Lewis, a committed Christian, Aslan was a direct representation of Christ, but in the broader Rosicrucian Code, he represents the universal principle of self-sacrificial love, the catalytic force that alone can complete the great work and transform a base world into a kingdom of spirit. Both Tolkien and Lewis used the language of fantasy not to escape the world, but to provide a new symbolic lexicon for its redemption, proving that the secret vault could be hidden in the most unexpected of places, a hobbit's pocket or a child's spare room. Dan Brown did not invent the secret. He simply gave it a best-selling passport. In novels like the Da Vinci Code, the ancient Rosicrucian archetypes are repackaged for a modern audience, transforming the slow, meditative quest for inner gold into a breakneck treasure hunt. The formula is instantly recognizable. A symbologist, a modern initiate, must decipher a trail of clues hidden in the art and architecture of Europe to uncover a world-altering truth protected by a secret society. The Priory of Sion stands in for the Rosicrucian Brotherhood. Leonardo da Vinci's paintings become the coded manuscripts, and the Holy Grail is the ultimate lost secret. Historians and scholars rightly point out the glaring inaccuracies in these fictional plots, yet the immense popularity of these stories points to something far more significant than historical fact. It reveals a deep, collective hunger for the very narrative the Rosicrucian Manifestos first proposed centuries ago. Why is this formula so irresistibly compelling? It validates a profound intuition many of us share, that the world we see is not the whole story. The idea that our most revered museums and cathedrals are not just repositories of beauty, but are active libraries of a hidden knowledge, is electrifying. It suggests that a deeper reality is concealed just beneath the surface of a painting or carved into a stone pillar, waiting only for someone with the right key to see it. This transforms a visit to the Louvre from a casual tour into a potential initiation. You are no longer just a spectator. You are a detective standing before the Mona Lisa, wondering if her smile truly does guard a secret. This fantasy taps directly into the core Rosicrucian promise that the initiated individual, through intuition and perseverance, can uncover a truth that reshapes their understanding of the world. The hero is not a saint or a king, but an expert, a scholar, someone whose knowledge of the code allows them to see the invisible patterns connecting everything. This is a deeply empowering myth for our time. It tells us that the power to discover profound truths is not locked away in some inaccessible vault, but is hidden in plain sight within our shared cultural heritage, accessible to anyone who learns to look with new eyes. While the novels may simplify the spiritual journey into a chase, they succeed in making millions of readers feel, even for a moment, that the world is far more mysterious and interconnected than it appears. They remind us that the greatest secrets are not necessarily those that are lost, but those we have forgotten how to see. The flickering light of the silver screen became the new stained glass, projecting ancient secrets for a mass audience. Fritz Lang's silent epic Metropolis is far more than a warning about industrial class struggle. It is a sprawling Rosicrucian allegory for a fractured world. The city is starkly divided between the head and the hands, the planners who live in luxurious skyscrapers, and the workers who toil in oppressive underground machines. This separation is the central sickness, a world where intellect and labor have been torn apart, with no heart to mediate between them. The savior figure is not a revolutionary, but a mediator named Maria, who preaches that the heart must be the bridge between the head and the hands. The film's iconic climax, where the son of the city's master joins hands with a worker, is the ultimate symbol of this reconciliation, the moment the three forces are united to create a whole, functioning society. This is the Rosicrucian Reformation rendered in steel and shadow, a blueprint for healing a civilization by integrating its disparate parts. Decades later, a different kind of labyrinth would appear, one carved from earth and ancient stone. Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth transplants this secret tradition into the brutal soil of post-Civil War Spain, framing a young girl's escape from fascist reality as a profound initiatory journey. The protagonist, Ophelia, is told she is the lost princess of a magical underworld, but to reclaim her throne, she must prove her essence has not been corrupted by the mortal world. Her tasks are not mere fairy tale trials. They are classic tests of the soul's character. The first, confronting a giant toad that is poisoning an ancient tree, is a lesson in healing a corrupted system from its rotten core, not through violence, but by understanding its sickness. The second, using a piece of magic chalk to escape a pale, child-eating monster, is a test of obedience and discernment, of knowing when to follow instructions and when to trust her own moral judgment. The final and most heartbreaking task is the ultimate sacrifice, the offering of innocent blood, when Ophelia refuses to harm her newborn brother, choosing her own death instead. She completes the final stage of the chemical wedding. Her physical death is her spiritual coronation, the moment her blood, willingly given, opens the portal to her true kingdom. The golden hall that awaits her is the achieved rubido, the eternal realm where she is finally recognized as the princess she always was. Her journey through the labyrinth is the soul's path through the trials of earthly existence, and her sacrifice is the final transmutation that proves her royal, spiritual heritage. In these films, the cinema itself becomes the secret vault, and the projector's beam illuminates the age-old code for all who have the eyes to see. An enchanted flute can carry a melody, or it can carry a soul toward the light. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a devoted Freemason, did not merely compose an opera with the magic flute. He constructed a resonant temple of sound, a full-scale Masonic and Rosicrucian initiation ritual set to sublime music. The entire opera is a dramatic enactment of the great work, where every area and every trial maps the soul's arduous journey from ignorance to illumination. We follow the Prince Tamino, who begins his quest in a state of primal fear, fleeing a monstrous serpent. This is his Negrito, the initial chaos and terror that propels him onto the spiritual path. He is rescued by three mysterious ladies who serve the Queen of the Night, but his true salvation begins when he is given a portrait of the Queen's daughter, Pamina. Upon seeing her image, he is filled not with mere infatuation, but with a profound yearning for ideal beauty, a love that will become the driving force for his entire transformation. Pamina is not just a princess to be rescued. She is the symbol of the soul's own lost purity, the divine Sophia that the seeker must reunite with. Tamino's guide is the birdcatcher Papageno, a creature of pure appetite and simple desires. He represents the uninitiated everyman, the base matter that must also be refined, albeit in a more humorous and gentle way. Together, they set out for the temple of Sarastro, whom they initially believe is a villain. This is the first great test of discernment, the realization that the world of appearances is deceptive. The Queen of the Night, with her stunning, stratospheric areas, is not the wronged heroine she appears to be. She is the embodiment of untamed nature, emotional chaos, and the darkness of ignorance that resists the rule of reason. Her coloratura fireworks are a siren song of vengeance and superstition, a powerful force that must be overcome, not obeyed. Sarastro, in contrast, is the serene and benevolent ruler of a brotherhood dedicated to the sun, a clear portrait of a Rosicrucian or Masonic master. His deep, resonant areas are hymns to reason, virtue, and the eternal light. His community is the invisible college made visible, a sanctuary where men strive to perfect themselves through wisdom and brotherly love. Tameno's initiation into this community is the core of the opera, a series of symbolic ordeals that purify him. The first great test is the vow of silence. Tameno must remain silent, even when Pamina believes he no longer loves her. This is the ultimate trial of the intellect over the fleeting passions, the ability to hold one's peace and maintain inner focus amidst emotional turmoil. He then faces the ordeals of water and fire. With Pamina at his side, he walks through a roaring waterfall and through a blazing furnace, protected not by a physical shield, but by the enchanted flute itself. The flute's melody is the power of harmony and sacred music, which can transmute the destructive elements into agents of purification. This passage through the opposing elements is the alchemical marriage, the sacred union of the masculine and feminine principles within the soul that allows the initiate to pass unscathed through the extremes of experience. As Tameno and Pamina emerge triumphant, the queen of the night and her forces are vanquished by the rising sun. The opera concludes with a grand chorus celebrating the victory of light over darkness, a jubilant anthem for all who have endured the trials and been reborn into wisdom. Mozart encoded the entire secret path into a popular entertainment, offering a musical key to a spiritual door, proving that the most powerful initiations can happen not in a hidden lodge, but in a public opera house, for any heart ready to listen. A new kind of grimoire appeared not in leather and parchment, but on the glowing screen of a personal computer. The world of mist presented players with a beautifully desolate island, silent and abandoned, holding its breath. You are not a warrior, but a stranger who has stumbled upon a series of linking books, each one a portal to a self-contained universe. These are not merely levels in a game. They are ages, entire worlds conjured into existence through the precise art of descriptive writing. This is the Rosicrucian quest, reimagined for the digital era, where you are the solitary seeker stepping through the vault door into realms of pure knowledge. Your only tools are observation, intuition, and the patient unraveling of logic. The intricate environmental puzzles that block your path are the modern equivalent of alchemical riddles. To restore power to a dormant rocket ship on the age of Channelwood, you must first understand the hydraulic principles of a tree's root system. To raise a sunken fortress in the Selenitic age, you must learn to listen to the musical language of the crystals and the wind. Each solution is a moment of personal gnosis, a small flash of inner light earned not through combat, but through comprehension. You are not gaining experience points. You are reconstructing a broken cosmology, one gear and one lever at a time. The overarching narrative mirrors the central Rosicrucian mystery of a hidden family and a lost wisdom. You uncover the story of Atris, the last keeper of the art, and his two sons, Cyrus and Agnar, who have been trapped for their greed and misuse of power. The journals you find scattered throughout the ages are your manifestos, filled with philosophical musings and warnings about the moral responsibility that comes with creation. The entire game is a test of your character. Will you, like the fallen sons, seek to exploit these worlds for your own ends, or will you work to restore the balance that they shattered? Your journey through the silent, waiting ages becomes a profound metaphor for the seeker exploring different states of consciousness. Each world, with its unique physical and metaphysical laws, represents a different facet of the great mystery. The act of solving its puzzles is the inner work of aligning your mind with the hidden order of that realm. There is no priest or master to guide you, only the evidence left behind and the silent, insistent call of your own curiosity. The mist transformed the computer into a secret chamber and the player into an initiate, proving that the longing to solve the great puzzle and restore a broken harmony is a timeless drive that can find its home in any medium. Of course, every grand narrative faces the test of the skeptical eye. A powerful criticism leveled against the Rosicrucian story is the simple question: did they ever truly exist as a physical, organized brotherhood? The historical record is frustratingly silent. No membership rolls, no meeting minutes, no signed letters from Christian Rosicrucian himself have ever been found. This profound lack of concrete evidence leads many historians to conclude that the original Rosicrucians were not a secret society, but a thought form, a potent philosophical idea given life through a brilliant literary hoax. The Manifestos, in this view, were not a call from a hidden order, but a call to create one, a seed of inspiration planted in the minds of Europe's intellectuals. This perspective forces us to confront a crucial distinction. Is the code we perceive in art a deliberate message from initiates, or is it a reflection of a pervasive cultural mood that artists naturally absorbed and expressed? The danger here is one of overinterpretation, a cognitive trap where our desire to find a pattern causes us to see connections everywhere. If you look at any complex work of art or literature with a predetermined key in hand, you can almost always force the pieces to fit. A red rose in a painting might be a token of romantic love, not a Rosicrucian emblem. A geometric pattern in a cathedral could be purely decorative, not a fragment of sacred geometry. This is the risk of turning the quest for hidden knowledge into a game of esoteric Rorschach tests, where every shadow becomes a symbol and every coincidence becomes a clue. Yet, acknowledging this risk does not invalidate the entire pursuit. It refines it. The true value of the Rosicrucian Code may not be its historical verifiability, but its interpretive power. It provides a coherent and deeply resonant lens through which to view humanity's enduring spiritual struggles. When we analyze a story like Faust or a painting by William Blake using this symbolic framework, we are not necessarily uncovering a secret authorial membership. We are engaging with the universal themes of transformation, the tension between reason and spirit, and the quest for inner gold that have always haunted the human imagination. The Code gives us a language to discuss these profound undercurrents. It allows us to see the philosophical unity between a Gothic cathedral's architecture and a modern fantasy novel's plot, revealing a continuous thread of yearning for a more enlightened world. So the question shifts from, did a specific group hide this message, to why does this particular key unlock so many different doors across so many centuries? The enduring power of the idea itself may be the most important secret of all. Perhaps the deepest secret is that the Rosicrucian Code has no need for a historical headquarters, because its true home is the human heart. This hidden tradition persists not because it offers factual proof, but because it answers a profound and timeless hunger. In a world that often feels chaotic and meaningless, the Code whispers a radical promise that there is an elegant, intelligent pattern woven just beneath the surface of reality. It tells us that the chaos we experience is merely the raw material, the negrito of the world, waiting for the clarifying fire of consciousness to transmute it into gold. This is not a call to escape the world, but to engage with it more deeply, to see the mundane as a canvas for the miraculous. We long for the idea that a dusty old book or a forgotten painting might contain a key, not just to a historical mystery, but to the very architecture of our own souls. This search for a hidden order is a fundamental human drive, a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of the random. The Code transforms the act of looking at art or reading a poem from passive consumption into an active quest. It makes the seeker a participant in a grand, centuries-long conversation about the nature of truth. Why does a rose blooming on a weathered cross feel so resonant? Or a story of a humble hobbit's sacrifice stir something so deep within us? These are not just stories, they are maps. They chart the universal journey from the lead of our limitations toward the goal of our potential. The narrative assures us that personal transformation is not only possible, but is the central purpose of our existence. It validates our struggles, framing our personal periods of darkness and despair as necessary stages in a sacred process of inner alchemy. The greatest allure lies in its message of accessible hope. Enlightenment is not portrayed as a remote state for saints or geniuses, but as a latent capacity within everyone, waiting to be unlocked. It suggests that the tools for this awakening are not locked in a vault, but are encoded in the very beauty humanity creates, in the stories we tell and the art we cherish. The code is an invitation to look again, to listen more closely, to read between the lines of our own lives. It endures because it tells us the most comforting story of all, that we are not lost in a wasteland, but are standing in a library of infinite wisdom, and the only thing required to begin reading is a willing heart and a curious mind. From silent manuscripts to glowing screens, this grand current has flowed unbroken for centuries. The Rosicrucian Code is not a single, dusty secret to be unearthed, but a living way of seeing the world. It is a lens that reveals a perennial philosophy, a timeless story of the soul's journey from darkness into light, repeated in every age through the language of its time. The manifestos of the 1600s were a call, and the answer has echoed through Gothic stone, Elizabethan verse, romantic poetry, and cinematic dreams. It is the same story of transformation, whether told in the alchemical colors of a painting, the symbolic trials of an opera, or the silent puzzles of a digital island. This persistent undercurrent in our culture speaks to a universal human longing, a deep and abiding hope that our existence is part of a greater, more meaningful pattern. The true power of this code lies not in proving its historical existence, but in the profound questions it inspires us to ask of the art and stories we love. Look again at that painting that has always held a strange fascination for you. Revisit that book or film that felt inexplicably resonant. Ask yourself what hidden language of symbols might be at work. What journey of the soul is being mapped out in its narrative? You now hold a key, not to one locked door, but to 1,000. The greatest discovery is not finding the final answer, but realizing that the quest itself is the destination. We would love to hear what you find. Share in the comments a piece of art, music, or literature that feels like it holds a secret wisdom, and tell us what you see. The conversation has been going on for 400 years, and your voice is the next essential